Good morning and welcome to everyone. I think all of you know me, and I think I know all of you, so I will skip past the introductions. May I just say that always when I am here on Sundays, I am really grateful, profoundly so, for each and every one of you for getting up and showing up in attendance to your spiritual selves. Because guess what, guys? If you don't, no one will. And the chances are really pretty good that if you don't, if you choose to disregard that whole component of whatever it is, that is us, that is spiritual. I don't know about you guys, but it gets real ugly in my house real quick. I don't even like the cats anymore, okay? So this is like a have to kind of thing. Have to, want to, oh, we might as well anyway kind of thing, So at any rate, we come together here to grow and to learn and to walk this spiritual path together. And as we're doing that, a lot of times we have fun, sometimes we have sorrow, but always, we look around and we recognize that we have some spiritual principles and we have some things we can hang our hats on. And if those have supported you, I encourage you to share them. If you're terrified of bringing someone here on Sunday, bring them to the picnic. We'll have fun, and I promise I'll try to behave. I'll try. You heard the word try. Remember what Yoda said, there is no try. Barbara, there is only do. So we continue with chapter 6 of the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. Hello, goodbye. By Deepak Chopra. I love it. This 6th chapter is on the Law of Detachment. Oh my. We're going to get in this so deep. But before we go there, you had a homework suggestion for last week. We had a little handout. If you weren't here, didn't get it, or didn't do it, and still want to think about it, you can. So on this, there were 2 questions that you could ask yourself every morning. If I were born today in this body and at this age, what is it that I would choose? What would I choose if I had no past? And as Tony very conscientiously pointed out to me after the service last Sunday, this thing is really kind of difficult. Because if you take away the past, you take away all of it. You got nothing to move or segue from in going forward. It's really powerful. So if you did this and want to share about it, put a hand up. Thank you very much. I love you guys.
I have to go back to school because education really does open your mind.
Beautiful.
Up.
Yes.
It keeps you from the black and white thinking that permeates everything nowadays. It's like it's either good or bad. There's
It's huge. It's huge, isn't it? And so my encouragement is go back to school.
All right.
All of us. I think about when I retire, I'm going to go back to SEC and become an OTA. They make more money than in a week than I make in 3 months, I think. Okay, I don't know. It doesn't matter, that it's all about money. It's because it's not. But I think about, I could go do this. That would be so much fun to learn. Or I think about if I could get over the blood thing, I could go to nursing school. I don't know that they'll take me when I'm 82. But, it's worth saying, hey, I'm here, right? I'm already planning to be an Olympic granny swimmer. I just want you guys to know that. Hold that in consciousness for me, okay? That's on my what would I choose list. Who else has something to say about that? Someone is pointing to Tony, who is not pointing to himself. So
He raised his hand.
Oh.
Well, I can't get rid of the past.
No, we can't.
But if I were to choose, I would proclaim a future of an educator of skills like shop or
yes,
working with materials and plants and stuff like that. What triggered that was that when I was in college, a professor had moved to, I think, New Mexico, wrote me a nice letter inviting me to come to New Mexico to join him at his new university to continue in, back then it was like shop education or something like that, So I've been thinking about that. I said, gee, that would be nice, and I like teaching, Right now it's photography, but I have other interests that I think that's necessary because everyone's saying, there's no jobs in the United States, but yet we did away with apprenticeship in the shops.
Yes, we did.
Yeah,
We
and
lost something, didn't we?
right, I think we did lose that. Yeah, and I thought that would be a nice way to give back to the community, to the country as a whole, by advancing shop skills,
Those kinds
either
of
for
skills.
education or for enjoyment of older people. Either
Yes.
way.
Well, and you think about, I don't know about all of you, but I look at the situation that some of our youth find themselves in, where they really, I saw, this was like a Facebook post maybe 3 weeks ago, but this girl who's graduating from high school is saying, I don't know how to prepare a meal. I don't know how to balance a checkbook. Excuse me, what are we doing? And more importantly, what are we not doing? And you bring a beautiful point to light, Tony, which is that, before there was paper, before there was written skill, there were people being mentored by their elders. And they learned things that gave them self-confidence, okay? That gave them a way to barter and live in the community, that gave them intrinsic, and we all have value. I don't want to say, maybe it's not intrinsic, but gave them a kind of a commercial value or a value where they had that skill set to trade and share to benefit others with, and to also use as a mechanism for, getting the other things they needed. Really powerful stuff. I think for me, what this has done, and I've been working with this for about 2 weeks now, okay? Not every morning, but a lot. And what I will do is write out the questions and then just sit in the silence and sort of see what comes up. Is two things that it has made me ponder what it is that really lights my fire, that I would walk across coals for, that I would get up out of my so-called deathbed for, that animates and motivates me. And also, having lived now for more than several decades, don't get it smart with me, don't be shouting out no numbers there, y'all, okay? But having been here for a while and looking at the fact that, what I'm facing is the rest of my employable years, and then what I want to do for the rest of my life, and what is the legacy I want to leave? What is it when I go that people can say, this person really not say, but shared something with me that made a difference? What is the thing that I want to leave with the world in terms of benefit? And that's been huge, I think if we all begin to live our lives oriented around how can I be of service and what gifts can I bestow in the moment, in the year, in the decade, and all throughout my lifetime, will change the nature of this world. It's really powerful. So keep asking that. If you didn't have the, first off, did anybody else want to share anything about that? I don't want.
I'd probably sell my house and some of my possessions and just travel around the world and learn about other cultures.
Yeah, wouldn't that be
See what I can
amazing?
find out.
Yeah, be phenomenal. Because there's such a rich universe out there, and it's so very easy to get microscopically tunnel visioned, in our lives, our little get up and goes, our, sit down and stops, those kinds of things.
I've got
Awesome.
something.
Yes, please.
Well, I wasn't here, but I'm mouthy. So I was thinking that there's such a lack of critical thinking that I would love to go back and teach people how to think critically
about
about
things.
everything.
Yeah.
So,
And that's you know,
Start
that's
with the politicians.
tangential to what we
Start with
do
what?
The politicians.
here. Yes, please start with the politicians, okay?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, let's go back to the old school method where only the wisest are the elders, and they might not be elders in years, but the true wisdom keepers who live it, practice it, and are it, end up in that position, that kind of position as leadership. Wouldn't life be a very different scenario than it is now? So looking at all of that is a huge step away from the known and from our, what we know. And that's where, when we unhook the past, we really and truly open something that we know. I don't think we have the capacity to conceptualize it. That's it. I think our human minds are not quite as well endowed as they could be in that arena. All of this moves us away from the known and into the unknown, and that is a huge piece of the law of detachment too. Deepak Chopra describes the law of detachment as essentially a letting go of our opinions about how things should turn out, about the results that we are seeking to impart, to put in place through our practicing of the law of intention and desire that we looked at last week. That's really bizarre, isn't it? It's as if detachment and the law of intentionality, or the law of intention and desires, are almost at odds with each other. We'll say more about that in a moment, because they're not, but they could be if we are not conscious in our practicing of them. Deepak also tells us that detachment is based, and I think this is the piece, maybe the foothold that we miss sometimes. It's based on the unquestioning belief in the power of our own true selves. That is, selves with a capital S. And in our ability to bring the good, to milk the good from the godzillions of possibilities that are always ours to choose from. All of this, to me, when I look at it and think about it, just seems really, kind of that term bass, what's a kind of cattywampus. Again, here we've been working so hard with intentions and desires to be clear and to put out that which we desire. How can we then simply release the attachment we have to the results? Yet, that's exactly what we need to do. He goes on to tell us in this book that when we do this, when we hold a one-pointed intention with clarity and kind of a totality, and at the same time completely release our opinion about what the results are, we will begin to manifest. Like that. Okay? An experience of happening in my world happened years ago when I was still in ministerial school. And I've shared this before, so I know some of you will remember it. I was, at that time, a Science of Mind practitioner with the Center for Spiritual Living in Asheville. And that community had started a second service that started at 9 a.m. And I had been specifically asked to be there for the 9 o'clock service because they wanted practitioners there to seed that, to be of service to people coming, and that kind of thing. So I was walking out my back door, getting to go get in my car one morning. It was one Sunday. It was like 7:30, and I was thinking about money. I like to think about money a lot. Okay, that's just one of my favorite things to think about. Okay, I like to do all kinds of things with money. Spend it, share it, tithe it, invest it, and give it away for the fun of it. This morning I went through McDonald's and I said, and this you put in that Ronald McDonald House thing, and the kid just looked at me and went, all of it? And I'm like, yeah, I know, right? It would be gas for 2 weeks in your car, but it's okay, just put it in there. At any rate, it wasn't that much, I'm kidding, but at any rate, I'm coming out the back door, and I'm thinking about the story that I heard about another practitioner at that very center. She and her friend had been on the way to Florida, and they were in a Mazda Miata, and they had the top down. Actually, my friend's mom was terminally ill, and she was living in Florida, and so they were going down there. They'd been going back and forth a lot to see her. And one of them said to the other, you know, we're so powerful, we can make money fall out of the sky. And it did, to this day. And I know the people this happened to, and I know they tell the truth. No exaggeration, no bullshit, no nothing. Money came out of the sky as they were driving to Florida that day, okay? Who knows, for they never found out. They never saw anything in the paper or anything, okay? So I'm thinking about that as I'm walking out the back door, and I'm thinking about what Ernest said. Ernest said if it can happen for one, it can happen for everyone or anyone. We just have to be that consciousness. So I'm thinking, I need money, God, okay? So don't ever say, I need money, God, okay? Don't put need and money in the same sentence, please, but that's a whole nother Sunday morning. At any rate, I'm saying that, and I'm saying if it can happen for them, then by golly, it can happen for me. And I forgot all about saying that. And I got in my car, and in the CD player was Karen Drucker. So I started singing Karen Drucker at the top of my lungs, and I drove down I-40, and I walked to the center, and it was really early, and nobody was out front to greet me. I guess I was supposed to be there to greet them or something. I walked in, and as I walked into the social hall, somebody was standing back in the corner behind the bookcase, and they came out and they grabbed my hand. They stuck a $100 bill in my hand. And it took me until 3 o'clock that afternoon to go, you did that. In part, because I had absolutely no claim on how that knowingness, that declaration that I had made walking out my back door to get in my car, okay, turned out. I just walked in the center to go do my business, and boom, somebody laid some money on me. It was totally amazing. So that's an example of how that happens. Why do you think living the law of detachment at the same time that we are living the law of intention and desire is so powerful? Because somewhere in there, we let go of whatever it is that is behind our desire to manifest something. And as Deepak is very clear in this chapter, very often what motivates us to try to manifest something is fear. It is the belief stuck inside our psyches, probably even in our bodies, that we're not going to have enough, that we're not good enough, that there is something that lives outside of us that we need. And that if we don't have it, we won't be complete, we won't have enough, we won't be able to carry on. It's a huge issue. If that motivates what we are intending, then as we move forward, we are carrying that burden of fear with us. Let's look at the next slide, okay? It's a whole lot like this. You've seen this so many times, it's scary. But the iceberg is a perfect analogy for what often is going on with us. We might have a little awareness outside of the waterline, there above the waterline, that tells us, yes, I've got some fear, some insecurity about the future. I'm afraid things might not go the way I want. I'm, kind of concerned about that. But in comparison, what is deep within the subconscious is much larger. And because it carries such a strong, silent message, it permeates that intention. And it literally acts as a force field around us to keep that which we are working to manifest from us. If we can let go of the result, most of the time we will have dealt with the mess that's under the water. Yeah, Carol.
It just occurred to me, I've seen this photo 100 times, and it just occurred to me, look at the subconscious part. It loosely resembles the human skull.
Oh, it certainly does, doesn't it?
Never
Wow.
noticed that before.
I see a uvula in there.
Yeah.
While it's an interruption, I missed what the law of detachment is.
The law of detachment is basically letting go of our opinion about about the outcome of something. So we might be working toward perfect health, and perhaps what is behind that is a fear that if we are not healthy, very validly so, we can't take care of ourselves, perhaps we can't work, perhaps we can't have the lifestyle and the activities that we desire to have. And yet, as long as fear is motivating our intention, it is permeating that intention and basically sullying it. Does this make sense? When we can let go of that, we can create with a much clearer consciousness. Okay? So it may be that a very good question to ask ourselves when we're working toward bringing something into form and it seems to be shifty or not working too well or just a big old pain in the you-know-what, okay, and not happening at all, that we ask ourselves, what's behind my desire to bring this into form? And be honest with yourself. I like to do this level of work with my journal because it's almost like this other person, completely non-judgmentally, is witnessing this, okay? And if I lay those answers out on paper, it's like some of that stuff under the waterline begins to melt. Okay? It's not a great thing for global warming, but for letting go of our fears and doubts and uncertainties, in some ways it's very powerful. Okay? If we find out that it is truly fear that often holds us back, remember a segue, Marianne Williamson. It's not our and I can't quote it. It's not our smallness that scares us. It's our largeness. It's what we truly are. I'll find that. It's called Shine. I've got it on my hard drive. I'll bring that because it's really a beautiful reading, and I think it's very apropos for what we're looking at with Deepak here. Okay. If we find, though, that we have fears, all right, big deal. Who doesn't? For those of you that came through the placebo class, and actually I think we talked about this last week too, remember that we're always dealing with that thing that Joe Dispenza calls the analytical mind. That is that part of ourselves, very appropriately so, that goes right, wrong, black, white, yes, no, want it, don't, okay? Its job has kept us alive. It's the thing that says, car coming, not coming, okay? Bill to pay with next paycheck, bill to pay with next month's paycheck, okay? It's the thing that keeps us lined up, but if we allow that part to rule, it will run us ragged with fear. Because its job is to make sure our every single little need and beyond is met. And it does that by basically making us nuts. Okay? So if we have fears, it's important to go, big deal. That's okay. It might be important to look at those places where we are afraid and go, perhaps that's even an old wound. Perhaps that's something that through nourishing and allowing the air to get to it and looking at it, I can heal. I can clear up and release that energy that's around that and become more capable of creating. When we can move through those kinds of concerns, literally we become much more powerful in our ability, again, to bring things into form. Think about Yeshua. Think about that man, the centurion, who was a very powerful man, held a very high station. He went to Yeshua and said, I know that you, also a powerful person of high station in your realm, can heal my servant, my beloved friend, who has served me so well. He knew it. Jesus did it just like that. he had no dog, if you will, to use a Southern colloquialism. He had no dog in that fight. It wasn't, he didn't have a care in the world about whether the guy was well or not. He just knew it done and it happened. It's amazing. When we look at attachment, to me it's really interesting that in some philosophies it's kind of another way that we might look at addiction here in our Western culture. In fact, in Buddhism, I think they view addictions as attachments basically on steroids, okay? Kind of ramped up attachments. The Buddha reminds us that the crux of all of our suffering is attachment. It's holding on too tightly. That picture that was there a moment ago was a lady floating in the ocean. If you go to the beach and you take up a handful of sand and you squeeze it as tight as you can, what happens? It just, you can't hold on to it, can you? Not all of it. That's what attachment does. It squeezes the life force out of something. Deepak tells us that attachment to money stems from poverty consciousness. If you find yourself uncomfortable when the collections baskets roll around, perhaps you've got a touch of this. I frankly don't think I know anybody who doesn't. Often a way to tell if we have some issues around money is to see how we feel with our bodies. Because the body doesn't lie. It will always tell us the truth. If we feel constriction or just discomfort, anxiety in the face of being asked for money, it might have something to do with that. When we cannot give with abandon, with joy in our hearts, and a desire to see that which we are giving to prosper and grow, truly we have allowed fear to set up house within our domain. The law of detachment doesn't interfere with the manifestation of our intentions and desires for one simple reason, and that is because we are embracing uncertainty. We are embracing the unknown and saying, from a godzillion possible results, I'm going to choose whatever happens. I'm going to continue with my intention. I'm going to hold strong to that. And I'm going to know that this or something better, just like somebody said to me this morning, this or something better is what shows up. An example of this might be, let's just say we decide to go buy a house. We're going to go buy a home. And so we do what people do. We look at newspapers. We look at, real estate stuff. We go talk to Carol, okay, if we're looking for a place in Franklin. She's going, yeah, call me, okay? Carol sells Franklin, right? Okay, that's great. We talk to realtors. We probably look at way more houses than we ever wanted to. We drive down roads we've never been on and see for sale signs and go, maybe that one. We see things that we like. We narrow, we compare, we contrast, we pick out a few. We pick out a few less. We pick out, less and less and less, and we decide on one. And then all of a sudden, the realtor calls and says, hey, I've got something I've really got to show you. I think this is going to be sweeter than anything you've looked at. And so we go, okay, we get in the car, we go out and look at it, and it is so beyond perfect. What we've done here is, in that process of looking for a home, we didn't seal the deal. We didn't say this and only this. We didn't make an intention that was so damned black and white, pardon my language, that nothing else could get in the door, okay? And so something better than what we had already had our eye on showed up. Have you ever had that happen? I've had that happen more than once. When we live the law of detachment, we don't feel pushed to arrive at solutions to those things in our lives that look like challenges. There's a really great story about Will Bowen, the founder of the whole complaint-free world movement. It's not even just a book, it's a whole movement. This story is hilarious. Sometimes it makes me mad to think about it. So Will is out driving his ancient Ford truck. Will is from the Piedmont part of South Carolina, the country part of South Carolina. And he's back there, he's living there, and he's on a kind of a road trip. He's going from point A to point B. And he's in this old, it's an ancient Ford truck. It's so old that he's got jugs of water with him because every so many miles he's got to stop and put more water in the radiator. It just can't hardly be fixed anymore, okay? Along with him is his, of course, canine companion, okay? Cats do not make good road partners, in case you wanted to know. Let me assure you of that, okay? So he's on the way back. He's been to point B or whatever, and he's going back to point A, and the truck breaks down. Well, he knows this route. He's been driving this route on and off all his life. And he realizes there's no service stations, there's no payphone. I think this is before cell phones. There's nothing. There's no automotive repair. I mean, there's nothing. It's just wilderness and, you know, the occasional house or barn and crops and that kind of stuff. So he gets out with a dog and he starts walking. He goes to the nearest house and he knocks on the door, hoping they'll let him use his phone, their phone. The man that comes to the door speaks to Will for a few minutes. And lo and behold, he works in the service department at the local Ford dealership. I'm like, no. Okay, really? So they get in the man's truck and they drive back to Will's pickup. And the guy looks at the truck. He's got his toolbox and everything. And he says, you know, gee, I'm a mechanic. I can't fix this thing. You don't need a mechanic. I don't have the right tools. I don't even have the right stuff in my service department there at the Ford dealership. I just don't know. What you need is a plumber. I'm not a plumber. And Will, at this point, is really working the complaint-free world thing. He's got a hold of it, and he's made this huge commitment. And if you don't know about Will, he's a minister, so he's got this whole congregation looking at him, okay, going, can he do it? Can he not complain for 21 straight days? Okay? Oh, try it. Yeah, I just can't wait. Okay? We've done it here. We'll do it again someday. It's interesting, isn't it? Okay, and that would be a complaint by the world that I just, by the way, that I just voiced. Anything sarcastic is considered a complaint too, okay? At any rate, the man looks at Will and he says, you know, I can't fix this thing, but my father-in-law is visiting this weekend and he's a plumber. I believe he probably has some tools with him. Let's go back up to the house. So they go get father-in-law and they come back and he brings his tools. And he's looking, rummaging, he looks at the truck for a minute, you know, he laughs, you know, kind of muttering to himself. And he's going through the junk in the toolbox and he pulls out this piece of tubing. And he said, you know, it's a funny thing about this piece of tubing. It showed up on my workbench at the shop a couple weeks ago. I never used anything like this in my life. This is not residential or commercial tubing. I would never need this in the job that I do. But it was late, I wanted to go home, I just threw it in the toolbox. And so I don't know where it came from. Really? I mean, really? Okay. Will kept that capacity, that amazing human capacity that we all have to shut the door and keep anything else from showing up. He kept that door open. He practiced the law of detachment long enough to get something different to show up. The plumber fixed his truck. Will and the dog got home. Nobody had, you know, to walk any more miles or have wifey drive 145 miles or any of that. Okay? He lived, he practiced the law of detachment. So how do we do this? Well, one of my favorite ways of doing this is just reminding myself that everything is a process. There's no closure unless I say there is. And most of the time, that's happening up here. Okay? If I will keep the door open and refuse to go, well, isn't that sweet? Now that's nice. Now I got a flat tire. What am I going to do? Okay? You know, instead of slamming the door shut, if I look around and go, okay, I got a flat tire. What else is possible? Obviously, something will work out. In fact, that's one of my favorite things to do is to just go, what else is possible? You know? What else could happen here? Because you know, you've been here too long, every one of you, you have it down pat, that in any given millisecond, we have a godzillions of possibilities to choose from. So the guy might not have been a plumber, he might have been an electrician, but maybe last week they put in a new hot water heater in the house and, you know, there's all this box of junk left over and there's a piece of tubing, who knows, right? You just have to keep pushing that door open. That's one of the ways that we practice the law of detachment. Another one is to just simply look at those times when you want to slam, we want to slam that door shut and think something is, you know, a negative outcome and settle for that, which is settling for much less than you are capable of, I know, okay? But to look at the fact that we have that desire and do what we did a couple of weeks ago. Remember saying, interesting point of view, that I have that point of view? Remember that? Well, you can do that. And what that does is it begins to distance us from that door slamming, end of situation, it's definitely a negative experience outcome mentality. We can also choose to embrace uncertainty rather than having a roadmap of how everything is going to work out in every little millisecond. When we do that, we literally open that realm of all those gazillions of possibilities for showing up. That happened to Will Bowen. It happened to me too. We can even remind ourselves that, you know, there's just an amazing array of things. If you stop and ask yourself the next time you seem to be faced with, you know, some kind of obstacle, what else is possible? I guarantee you in 30 seconds you will start having ideas. And that is this interactive universe feeding ideas back to us. It's always doing that. Every idea you ever had came from somewhere, okay? There's a bigger idea field that's here for our use all of the time. In our closing song, in just a moment, Jason Mraz is going to advise us of several ways that we can live the law of detachment. The first thing he suggests is that we feel it, that we go back, and if that's fear, if that's uncertainty, if that's doubt, if that's I just don't know, I've never lived through puberty before, I don't know how to be a senior citizen before, okay? I don't know how to do anything. None of us did. You didn't know how to get born. You didn't know how to do puberty. I don't know how to be an old lady. And it's going to be a long damn time before I am one, so let me just make that very clear now, okay? But you got the picture, okay? You know, the amazing thing is if we work through some of that stuff, that emotional stuff, things will clean up. He also tells us that we can do something that I find very similar to Science of Mind, to the sage wisdom of Ernest Holmes, in that he tells us to look at every other moment of our lives, every other moment, every other breath we ever took, and be grateful for that. And you know, when we do that, that's exactly what Ernest was talking about when he said, turn away from the condition. When we turn away from the condition, what are we doing but opening to the realm of possibility? He's also going to remind us, Jason is in the song, that we can remind ourselves that some good is happening somehow, some way. We just don't have that microscopic, microcosmic, macrocosmic, little big picture of it in any given moment. All it takes is patience and time and keeping the door open. So as we go, ask yourself this week, how shall I live the law of detachment? I love you. gonna be fun. Thank you.
I see all these suggested things.
All right.
You have a good